Good afternoon and welcome to episode 13 of Inside Out, a monthly webcast where Thinka's co-founders and respective COO and CEO, Ben and Lee, talk through all the weird and wonderful, hard and human parts of business and leadership. This month, we're exploring resolving conflict and decoding conflict triggers. Today, we're focusing on two questions. What are the main triggers of workplace conflict? And how do I identify the type of conflict I'm dealing with as a leader so I can manage it better? And we've got a lot of questions on the registration page, which Ben and Lee will be able to weave in today. But there was one particular one we wanted to call out. It's a really good one. Which conflict trigger is most often misdiagnosed in the workplace, leading to leaders to fix the problem, band-aid solutions, instead of the root cause? And how do you spot it before it escalates?
Conflict is one of those topics that don't often get talked about, given that, often they can lead into that territory around questions to do with psychosocial factors, bullying, harassment, etc. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about sort of general team conflict or conflict between individuals. Interestingly, in the research, we found that it's actually one of the biggest fears for new managers. So I think sometimes we have this bias towards conflict being a measure of our team not being successful, but there is a difference between healthy conflict and unhealthy conflict. So healthy conflict is helping us to generate new ideas. It often breaks old patterns. It introduces greater awareness around who our colleagues are, how they want to work, their communication styles, etc. And it can actually deepen bonds in the team if we have a bit of biffo with each other and we can be really honest and open about our thoughts and feelings. It can sometimes lead to a greater sense of respect for one another and understanding each other's perspective. And certainly when we think about that type of conflict, it's much more preferable to artificial harmony. When conflict festers beneath the surface and becomes, resentment or avoidance or, a complete breakdown in communication, that is often worse than that initial conversation where it can be difficult and tough and trying, but both parties or all parties that are involved in the conflict really just getting their true thoughts and feelings out there. So the rumbles are important, I think, to constructive team dynamics, but it does take a little bit of skill in being able to work with that and cultivate that culture.
I reckon the piece around why has this become a thing or where has this all come from? What we absolutely do know as a fact is within Thinker's capability analysis data of about 1,500 samples there are now, conflict often, or the lack of ability to resolve it, I should say, often ranks in the bottom three underdeveloped skills. So it absolutely for new and emerging leaders has got to be a focused skill development piece because there is actually evidence to say that it actually goes undeveloped because there's an avoidance to it because of the bias around conflict, or maybe it's past experience or any of those things. So this is one where you've got to invest some time into it, especially if you're someone that maybe avoids conflict yourself, or you would prefer to have a harmonious team environment versus one that can have robust conversations.
Mm.
There is both the ability to look for resolution for the team and how they all get along, but also how we in that moment are going to lead conflict and know that sometimes we can actively encourage disagreement and different perspectives. And that's actually okay. That is actually still navigating conflict before it even gets to resolution. So just know that avoidance isn't the answer. Before we jump too much into the what, the why, and the how, Lee, let's cast our minds back to 9 years ago. How were we when we first started working together? With
Oh,
big
yeah,
conflict
it
avoidance.
was
Yeah.
not pretty, Ben.
Give me some feedback, maybe right now, on how we got from in the early days being quite hot-headed when we disagreed on something to now genuine disagreement can lead to better outcomes.
Mm.
How did we get there? What was the journey for us?
I do think in the early days, we often saw the conflicts we were having as indicative of that person and the personality that they had, as opposed to actually seeing oh, okay, that person's more of a divergent thinker. In my case, you're more of a convergent thinker. My values are truth and kindness, your values are growth and independence. So, where you might want to push, I'm thinking about how that's going to affect the team and the kindest possible way to bring them on the journey, as an example. But in the early days, we didn't kind of understand our thinking styles, our values, or the ways that we work are quite different as well. You're quite structured and focused, whereas I'm probably going to move between lots of different tasks in a very fluid way. But when we didn't know that about each other, we would just grind each other's gears and really get frustrated because I wasn't doing the things the way you wanted me to do them and you thought that was the right way, and vice versa. I thought you were too rigid and a bit of an arsehole, really. So like it was about understanding that no, it's not that. It's not personality. It's actually that we bring different strengths and we have a different perspective on how this business is going to work and the things that matter. And understanding that has been revolutionary to us, actually being able to have respectful but robust conversations.
And at any point, did you try to change me? Did I try to change you?
I don't think it showed up so much as wanting to change, but as just frustration.
Mm.
And but the frustration signals the deeper conflict. What do I need to understand about this person, this situation? How did we get here? What am I doing that might be kind of adding fuel to the fire? I think one of the best skills we can have for conflict management and resolution is self-awareness and social awareness. So the two things are related, obviously, in terms of having emotional intelligence. But that is key, I think, to understanding and breaking down a conflict and separating it out from the person to, okay, a unique set of values, a unique set of ideas, a unique set of priorities. So that's the bit that you focus on rather than, oh God, he's annoying, he just does this thing over and over again. We can't move on from this. This is going to be the end of the business. I mean, we're still here 9 years later, so we figured it out.
With conflict, we're often getting lessons about ourselves unless we're willing to either listen to the recurring lesson and do something about it and bust maybe a pattern, or just know that that's going to be a moment in time where you're going to react this way. And it's really normal for you because maybe it links to something that's happened for you historically. Maybe it was a toxic workplace that you used to work in that undervalued you, multitude of different reasons why conflict might actually come out. But unless we're willing to get those lessons alongside the current team dynamic, we'll forever be frustrated.
Being willing to just have the difficult conversation and to sit in the discomfort, because unfortunately, conflict resolution isn't a skill. Yeah, you can do role plays, you can do all the things, but it's about actually committing to having those conversations because sometimes the skills develop as a result of just having courage, I think, and being willing to put yourself in a situation where you just need to learn in response to what's going on in the moment. And that will kind of take your leadership to another level when you're willing to actually face the moment and deal with it. In terms of conflicts, it was interesting in the research what came up as the 5 most sort of common workplace conflicts and what they were based on. So different communication styles was one. Personality clashes, often because of different values, was two. Resource competition, so issues around time, budget, the amount of team members or lack of team members. Leadership and management issues was number 4, and then stress and pressure was number 5. So interestingly, when I was reading this, I was like, yeah, they describe what might be conflict symptoms, but they're often not actually the trigger.
Yeah.
So getting to the bottom of a conflict, you kind of have to use that 5 whys approach sometimes. So what it looks like on the surface isn't often what the real problem is.
If you are someone who has been a conflict avoider in the past, maybe it's the avoidance to ever feel like you're being disempowered or you're upsetting someone or you're saying something wrong, like that ability to actually go, God, that's going to come up for me. At that moment, courage looks like, or listening looks like, or disagreement looks like, actually being able to go, that's what I'm looking for in this moment to work through it. And where I see this and have seen this play out the best is when you're leading a team, maybe through its chat, maybe through change, maybe it's through, restructuring, maybe it's through a really tricky client brief or project, to be able to anticipate the conflict's going to come up and not wait for it to happen, but to actually navigate it with the team by understanding, could be as simple as, okay, so what islands are we all on right now? So you guys over there are feeling like you're on robbed of resources island. You guys over there are feeling stress and pressure. You guys over there are feeling, what was the first one that you mentioned? Number one?
Communication styles or breakdowns.
Under communication, that you weren't part of the original brief. They're all on different islands right now. You've heard it before. You've been here before. You could accept that you've always been here, or you could proactively manage it and actually get people to contribute to the conversation, what island they're on, so as people can hear the perspectives, and you'll find very quickly that that increase in the awareness of others is going to defuse the drama cycle. You're actually putting conflict in front of them. You're not putting it behind closed doors. You're not putting it at the water cooler. You're not putting it in the drama cycle. That is not just being able to resolve conflict, but to lead through it as well. As a leader, sometimes you can only at that moment put a band-aid on something, knowing very well there's a deeper challenge there. But doing open heart surgery right now is just not the answer. So, and sometimes the work that you need to do is with an individual rather than a team dynamic as well. So you've just got to be able to read the play a little bit. I often will put a band-aid on a situation knowing that it's going to get me to the next point.
Yeah.
The actual momentum is what's required at that point in time. But what you need to come back to is either the feedback for that person to get a bit of a breakthrough, or when space and emotions have subsided, a more robust conversation.
Exactly. The 4 kind of conflict intelligence competencies I think are great to remember here. So Coleman talks about self-awareness, and we've already mentioned that, how important it is to have reflective practice in the moment and understand your involvement. Deep listening and really understanding where other people are coming from, checking your own biases, and understanding that, as you said, Ben, you're not always going to get to a place of agreement, but you can get to a place of mutual respect. Situational adaptivity. So conflict management isn't one strategy. It is a kind of toolbox of different strategies to apply at different times, which is why there's going to be band-aid solutions for the moment. And then when the time comes, open heart surgery. It's not going to be the same strategy every single time in every single moment. But then that last one, which we both quite like, that's systemic wisdom. So where are these chronic, deeply rooted conflicts coming from? Is there a bigger picture here that we're missing? What is that complexity? What is that past baggage that people are bringing in, or if there's a restructure, a hangover from a previous team experience potentially? Like, these are the things. Where is it systemic, and potentially what systems are present in the organization that aren't making it any easier? One of the pieces around diplomacy that I found really interesting was diplomats think in decades, not in news cycles.
Wild, I think.
So I think as leaders, if we understand conflict to be something that's not going to be wrapped up in a neat little package in one conversation, but it will be potentially a series of conversations, different approaches, different strategies, that is going to lead to the ultimate outcome. That's how we need to be thinking about it. The thing that we need to think about is, like, establishing that psychological safety is really important, and just making sure that people can raise concerns without that fear of retribution. So skills like empathy and curiosity, lots of open questions, but avoiding emails or messaging. And when you're handling conflict, look for those conversations, either virtual or in person, because that's really important to understanding body language, facial expressions, and the whole communication picture, not just the words, because they can often be read the wrong way, as we know, in emails and online messaging. So, and also not being afraid of cooling off periods. And for the management of conflict taking a little bit of time, that's okay. Like, we don't want people coming in all guns blazing, fired up, amygdala hijacks, running wild. So cooling off periods and focusing on the gradual outcome, as opposed to, right, let's tie this thing up and keep moving, is part of the science, I think.